Okay, this is Joe Leigh here for Seconds Out. Adam Morallee's joining me. How are you?
All right, Joe. Not bad, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Usually we start off on like S-Jam, etc., etc. But I was watching the video you did with Danny about 3 weeks ago, and this is, I quote, Usyk beats AJ again, then Fury and Saudi in December. And so far, every single thing you said there is going to plan. He's beating AJ again. And what we're hearing is it could potentially be this year and it could be in Saudi as well. So good prediction. Any inside knowledge?
Uh, I don't know. I think it was a prediction most people made. To be fair, Usyk on points. It's not like some remarkable prediction. Usyk on points, and yeah, I mean, I did hear that there's a certain time of year in, I think it's called Diriyah, in Saudi, when they want big events like this to take place, and that's in December. So that's why I thought it would be then. I think Saudi is one of the few places that has the finances for a fight like that. So I think it's going to be in Saudi one way or another.
Yeah, definitely. You're obviously in the business of boxing as well. What would you say is the most attractive thing other than money? Is it all money that the reason why it's in Saudi? What other things do you think they have to offer, Adam?
So I think Saudis have got a lot to offer. It's another part of the world. They can bring a different angle to it. They're just getting into the business, but it's something they like, are passionate about. I think that said, the reality for a fight like this is the amount of money that the guys want. I mean, if you look at the Usyk Joshua fight, the mechanics, like the economics rather, the economics of the fight don't stack up. The gate, you can't make. How do you make money in boxing? TV rights, gate, sponsorship. When you look at it, there's also a fourth thing, which is site fee. The Saudis will pay a huge site fee, and if you go to the O2 or Wembley, they charge you to go there. So that's the only place that's the only reason it makes that money there.
Okay. And as for the fight last week now, what were your reflections straight after? Obviously, you predicted an Usyk win. We saw a better AJ though.
Thought it was a great fight. Thought it was a great fight. I think Usyk's really a super elite fighter, genius boxer. I think beatable by the right fighter. But it wasn't AJ's night. I think sometimes you have chemistry matchups in boxing, and AJ, Usyk's just the way he is just difficult for Joshua. I actually thought he won pretty comfortably. I had him by 5 rounds.
How would he match up against Fury then now that you've seen him fight
I
AJ
think
again?
I think that's a fantastic fight for the boxing purist, the boxing connoisseur. Whether it would, I mean, it might appeal to the casuals from a promotional perspective. Fury would talk a lot. Usyk doesn't talk much, but Fury would talk a lot. But I actually think the fight, as it turns out, would be a real kind of. If you like boxing, you'd like the fight, but there ain't going to be any KOs in it. It's not going to be. It's not going to be that kind of fight. It's going to be very clever, very measured, and I think it would go to points. And I don't know. I think Fury is probably just too big for Usyk, but I think he really is a genius boxer. So I'd love to watch that fight, but will it have the casual cut through? I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that. And I was speaking a minute ago to someone about AJ Wilder. That would have like potentially
Right.
more
That's the
power.
opposite. That's the opposite. That has absolute casual. That is like bombs away. Someone's getting knocked out. Everyone will want to watch that fight. AJ Wilder, I don't care how many losses AJ has or how many losses Wilder's got. We're entering into a different era in boxing now where losses, I think, mean a lot less. And AJ Wilder does big numbers at a stadium and big numbers on pay-per-view, huge numbers.
What's a bigger fight then?
Fury Usyk is obviously the bigger fight. It's undisputed, right? It's obviously the bigger fight. But AJ Wilder, effectively the losers, like years ago, you'd call it the third place playoff. It's huge. I mean, it's got so much casual cut through. It depends what channel it's on, how it's promoted, but I can see that being a more appealing fight to casual boxing fans. And if you want to get big pay-per-view numbers, you have to appeal to casual boxing fans.
Yeah.
It's about name recognition as well. I mean, also in promotions, Usyk is a brilliant guy, a brilliant human being, but at press conferences doesn't say much, does he? So it's hard for Tyson Fury to get a rise out of him. But you just think about AJ and Wilder in a press conference. I mean, I know Wilder was very quiet in the last press conference. Or, the biggest fight of them all, and it still might happen, would have been AJ and Fury. So
Yeah, I think that's a good point. All you could imagine Usyk saying is "I feel," but there's only a
yeah,
certain amount of
I'm
time
very
you can do.
feel. Yeah, he's just a brilliant boxer, and certain boxers like that. There are many throughout the years, many boxers that's talented as Usyk who couldn't sell many tickets and who didn't say much, who didn't have brilliantly successful careers, or maybe not as talented as him, but very talented. So credit to him what he's done. But in many other ways, you look at boxers and you look at the economics of them, he doesn't score that highly.
And what you said a moment ago, would you expect it to be this year? Obviously, heavyweight fights are so difficult to make.
As I said, I believe I heard. I've got no inside knowledge other than I heard that they want to get it in Diriyah in Saudi. But then I saw Bob Arum said on Saturday night he thinks it's going to happen in February. I don't know why he said that or what that was about, but I just saw that comment. Now Bob Arum is obviously a hell of a lot closer to it than I am. Him being Fury's promoter, so maybe it'd be February.
Yeah. Either way, we saw Florian Marku as well last Thursday in Albania. He got the win. The crowd was there as expected. He can certainly bring a crowd out, can't he?
Yeah, amazing. I mean, the following day he had a reception put on by the Prime Minister, and then the day after he had another like public parade. I mean, I absolutely love him over there.
How did you assess the fight, Adam?
I didn't think it was a great performance from Florian, and I think Florian's admitted that. I think Florian was overcome by a lot of emotion. I think he was also cut in the fourth round, and I think that affected him. I think Florian has so much heart and balls, and when that happened, he stopped listening to Grant. And when he stopped listening to Grant, he went back to his old style, his kind of pre-boxing coaching style, where it's all heart balls. He's like MMA, and he's beckoning the guy on, which is not what we want him to do. Grant Smith's one of the best trainers in the UK. You saw Florian starting to get to grips with Grant's style in the fight against Chris Jenkins, and he was making a nice progression. He was sparring brilliantly, but listen, it wasn't a great night at the office of Florian. He understands that when he gets caught with the shot that knocks him down, he's square on. That's not what anyone wanted at all. So Florian was disappointed with his performance, but I think like a lot of times in boxing, 24 hours later you look at it, there were good aspects to it. He got the win, which he needed, and we move on to the next one. But I think Florian's disappointed. But it happens. It happens in boxing. The emotion gets to you. He was cut. Again, another injury. It's not excuses because we know what the performance was. It wasn't a great performance.
We've seen Florian be trained by Don Charles, Clifton Mitchell, Grant Smith. Do you feel like, obviously, he's moved around quite a bit? He's difficult to coach. Is that something that could be difficult?
I don't actually think he is difficult to coach. I think he's very coachable. And I think if you talk to his coaches, they will say he learns really well and he puts things into practice really well. The truth is, he didn't grow up boxing. He grew up a mixed martial artist. Yeah. So it's harder for someone to adapt. But I think all his coaches will tell him he learns very quickly. I think the difficulty, though, is not that he doesn't know how to do it. It's that if he gets a red head and he gets emotional in a fight, he doesn't put into practice what he knows how to do. And he reverts to the classic Florian, which is, he'll stand toe-to-toe with anyone and he will never give up. And the only way you'll beat him during the fight is by knocking him out unconscious.
Yeah, he can certainly sell a fight, and with the exciting fights that he has had, that can only, I guess, help sell fights in the future. With that being said, though, what opposition, what level are we expecting next time out? Have you had a think about that?
Yeah, I think we're with Sky now, Sky and Boxer, and Ben Shalom's really backed Florian during his career. Florian is one of the few fighters I think Sky has. He's a really, really great talker now. He's a really great talker, can really sell a fight. I'm sure many people watching this interview will think, oh, Florian's got a certain level. I believe he's above the level that many people think he is. I think he's got to have a very solid British name now. I think we've spoken about Josh Kelly. I know Tyrone McKenna's name's been mentioned. Someone who's a very, very solid British level name to show he can go past that level.
Okay. Look forward to seeing that. We obviously have Joyce Parker coming up. We've spoken about this with you on the channel, but yeah, Joyce has been out in Vegas, obviously with Johnny Fisher training, looking good.
Yeah, looking good. We're really happy. Shane's running that camp. He's running it brilliantly. We've got Carlos Takam in camp, giving Joe great rounds. And obviously we got Ismail Salas, one of the best coaches in the world, who's taking Joe through this camp. It's a little bit shorter than we would have wanted. But we're very content with where Joe's at, especially from a strength and conditioning perspective, from a boxing perspective. Touch wood, he's in a really good place right now.
And with Johnny, as he was over there, how do you plan on not marketing? He does a good job of that anyway. But how do you plan on stepping his levels up? Because he can get thousands of people to Sheffield. I think it was at 2,000. I might be wrong. It was however.
I think it was less than that. I think it was less than that, but I think he got 3,000 to Ali Pali.
Sorry, yeah, it's whatever it is, he can get thousands to events. A slow builder for him to get to say British level wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing because he can get that crowd already. How do you plan on moving him up the rankings?
I think one of the challenges with Johnny is how many tickets he can sell, how Matchroom, his promoter, obviously want him quite high up the bill because you want his fans to stay in there. So he's never going to be boxing at 4 o'clock on YouTube. And so when he's boxing that much higher up the bill, you have less chance to experiment, and the broadcaster wants a good fight. So I think we're working hard with the matchmaker at Matchroom, Tom Dallas, who's a great guy, very knowledgeable, with Shane, with myself, with Mark Tibbs, with the whole team, with Johnny's dad. We're really putting a lot of effort into opponents because we want to have good fights. We want to have learning fights for Johnny. And he's really developing on the job because of his amateur career. So matchmaking Johnny Fisher, there's little point in putting him in with certain people who aren't going to develop him. But the risk is you go too high too quickly and Johnny might come a cropper. So it's a real challenge matchmaking Johnny, but a really brilliant challenge.
It must be like a unique situation to be in.
Yeah, a little bit unique, only because he sells so many tickets.
Exactly.
He's so high up the bill. And when you're that high up the bill, you need a certain style of fight. But Matchroom, credit to Matchroom, they're incredibly supportive on the matchmaking side. They're not pushing us to take difficult fights because you could be looking at British level now with Johnny. You could be. And I think Johnny's got loads of really big supporters, but a lot of people out there who want to see him come a cropper. I think ultimately, as Johnny progresses, that's huge for his boxing career. He's not I wouldn't say he's a Marmite guy, but some of those Marmite guys really do get big pay-per-view figures because people want to see him win or see him get knocked out. And I think there are some people who probably think, he might be a bit overhyped, but I think people will see with Johnny, he's not overhyped in the slightest. He's a really, really great boxer, and developed correctly will move from British to European to world level.
He mentioned a Chris Lovejoy fight at America. When's America on the timescale for Johnny?
Probably not this year. We may have a foreign trip this year. I don't think it'll be America, but probably next year. That's an interesting fight. I like that fight.
Couple more things just on the Joyce Parker one. How soon do you think, if Joyce is successful, a lot of people think he will be, I'm sure you do. How soon do you think he could realistically get a world title shot with obviously everything being tied up at the moment?
I think Undisputed's got to happen. And then once Undisputed happens, you look at the other governing bodies. You've got Ergovic I think he's in a mandatory position.
Yeah, he is.
You're going to have Daniel Dubois fighting the winner of Hunter and Fury, Huey Fury.
Yeah.
WBC, you've got Wilder in the number 1 spot, Joe's in the number 2 spot. So you've got a lot of people vying for the winner of Fury Usyk. They'll either vacate all the belts or take one of them on, and then the other governing bodies, the BO and the IBF in particular, will make their decisions. So you could have some vacant title shots. The mandatory's up next March. So I'd be really hopeful that fight takes place before March, at the very least, end of March, 18 months from September 25th. And Joe will be in line for a vacant title shot or a title shot Q2 next year. I think that's really when we'll be looking at it.
Okay. And this is obviously how boxing works sometimes. Obviously, Daniel Dubois is WBA regular champion. how likely would you say that he gets a shot before Joyce? And how does that even, like, how frustrated would you be? Because obviously he's lost to Joe Joyce. And if he was to get a shot first, is that possible? Or
No, listen, I wouldn't be frustrated at all. I want Daniel to do well in his career because I want British fighters to do well in their career. Even if I'm being totally selfish, I want them to do well because it's bigger matchups for our heavyweight stable. So I think it's brilliant. I want Daniel to win. But I think that what's going to happen is there'll be a winner out of Fury and Usyk. And if it's someone like Tyson Fury, he may well just vacate all the belts. And then what you'll see is each of the governing bodies making all their own separate decisions. And there'll probably be a heavyweight title fight maybe every 2 or 3 months. Alternatively, they may just, if Usyk wins, he may say, I'll fight Dubois, I'll fight Joyce, I'll fight Ergovic. And by doing that, the other governing bodies won't wait around, they'll vacate. So I won't be frustrated at all. Maybe Daniel and Joe have world title fights simultaneously or within a few months of each other.
Okay, and then last question on the YouTube stuff we've seen this weekend. As I say, you're someone who's in the business side of boxing. How much potential, how far can this go with, obviously, we've seen the numbers it can bring selling out the O2 by 7 p.m. on Saturday. How far can it go?
It's incredible. I mean, I think when you come at it from a boxing purist perspective, you're thinking, who are these like kind of interlopers coming into the sport of boxing? They're not boxers. They're really treating it as an extension of their brand, and they're fighting someone who's not even at any kind of level. But I think you have to reposition your view slightly. Boxing is ultimately entertainment. It is entertainment. There are big parallels between boxing and music in terms of the way in which those things are promoted, how money is made, the economics are very similar. So I think it will continue to grow and grow. I think when you can get an audience like that, I mean, they've brought, 20,000, 18,000 people into the O2, and many of those fans probably wouldn't be going in there for 2 very well-known UK fighters. I mean, I went to a show last year in the O2, and I think it only did 2,000 tickets. I won't say the name of the show, but it did very, very few tickets. So I think it's really, really positive for the sport. I think people have got to look at the positives. It's what do they say? A rising tide floats all boats. I think it's a really positive thing. And I don't really get the hatred from certain other sectors. They may say, oh, you've never been a boxer. You've never struggled on the small hall shows. And now you see these people effectively eating or cutting your lunch. But I think the things can subsist alongside each other. And those people who are watching KSI box may get in. You're converting people into boxing fans. They may get interested in watching, a Southern area scrap at York Hall. They may be. I'm not saying they will.
All it needs is a small percentage, but show business is a good way to end that, as you touched on there. So really, really good chat. We'll do this again soon. Thank you for your time, and good to speak to you, Adam.
See you, Joe.